Hey guys, Camper 15 back at it with another video for you guys. And yes, after I don't know how long it's been, I am now back to reviewing My Happy Marriage. Now, for people who don't have any background information, My Happy Marriage season 2 is actually coming out literally in about 2 weeks now in January. And for anybody that knows, obviously, I did review My Happy Marriage on the channel when the show first came out. But then, because a bunch of stuff at that time got in the way, I never got a chance to fully review the remaining episodes that are out. So I'm going to be reviewing the last few episodes that are out. And it's actually, so I can finish up quickly, I'm going to review 2 episodes in one video, right? So regardless, I'm picking up where I last left off in episode 7, and things like that. And episodes 8 and 9 are pretty deep in terms of basically you get some follow up and some repercussions of after the events of episode 7. Now, if you forgot what happened in episode 7, well, that was the episode where Mio's old family, the Saimoris, ended up capturing her, basically due to her sister Kaya and basically her former best friend, or not her former best friend, but her best friend's father, because they knew she had the father did it because he knew, like, okay, she has this special ability. It's been a while. She has a special ability, and the special ability that's obviously from her family lineage, the Usaba's family, from her mom's side. He desperately wanted that in his family for obviously controlling reasons. And basically him and Kaya schemed up the fact of trying to do it. And then if you remember, they were trying, Kaya and her mother, obviously the adoptive mother of Mio, was trying to get them to say give up on Kudo and everything. And for one, she stood up to them and she was like, no, I'm not gonna give up to Kudo because you tell me, because I love him and everything, and he means a lot to me. And then that obviously happened. We had Kudo get involved and he basically saved Mio and everything. So you basically get the follow-ups here. You have it to where they're meeting the Emperor's son in the episode, and they basically cover it like there's this new guy that's the head now. And I forgot, it starts with a K. I forgot his name. I don't have any notes down or anything. But he basically is taking over, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to watch over and make sure like what happened with the Samoris is all good and dandy, and everything. And obviously he gives his apologies to Kudo. He's like, I'm so sorry that they troubled you with all this nonsense. I am happy that you are having a beautiful wife and everything. You're gonna get married, which again, it's been a common staple you see in this show, like how people are kind of shocked, like, oh, you're getting married and everything, and you're opening up more. So in the meantime, with what happens realistically in these 2 episodes, I'm not even going to just dive into one episode individually, but what we have in these 2 episodes from a Mio perspective is, one, she's training obviously for the event, which later is in the 13th OVA episode before season 2. If you watched it, clearly you know what I'm talking about, the party. And obviously Kudo's sister is teaching her obviously the etiquette and everything, and how to act and how to dress and how to walk and everything. It does lead to a funny whole thing right then and there. And then even in the 9th episode, we do get some backstory, because also another thing throughout the episode we get with Mio is the fact that throughout this time, because she's having these nightmares, because if I'm correct, like her abilities are trying to awaken and everything, and it's giving her these nightmares which are keeping her up late at night, because she's too afraid to go back to sleep, because every time she goes to sleep she has these nightmares. And it's kind of a thing in these 2 episodes to where the characters see, like, hey, you good? You look kind of pale and everything, you're not looking too well. And obviously if you don't get enough sleep, you're gonna get sick. And if you don't get enough sleep for enough amount of time, you basically could put yourself on the deathbed. And her health is basically declining and is in poor health because of these nightmares she's getting. She doesn't want to continue to fall asleep because she's afraid of getting these nightmares all over again. Again, you can't blame her. She's been through enough trauma as is, and then add in the fact, you know, you have these nightmares and everything, right? But you know, you even have it to where, like, you know, Kudo's sister is like, hey, take it easy, like, look, you know, because at the end of episode 8, like, clearly, like, she's very pale and everything, and you know, his sister is just like, hey, I think we should I think it's best we just go home, right? And we, you know, just have you rest and everything. And you know, Mio's trying to be like, oh, I'm good, and she's like, no, honey, you need to get some sleep, you know. And you understand it because, you know, Kazuki, that's the sister's name. I got it, it's all coming back to me now, right? So you know, Kazuki obviously the sister-in-law is looking out for her younger sister right then and there, and she's like, no, I'm not gonna let my husband's wife be in a situation to where you know, you're sick and everything, right? Now I will say, because eventually you have it to where Arata shows up, and so far, like, we see like he could potentially be a factor in trying to win Mio's heart because he knows the truth about Mio. Because in the 9th episode, he kind of confronts Kudo and basically telling him like, bruh, you know your wife is not feeling too good and she's not in the best condition. Like, she literally collapsed in my arms because she was pale and everything, and she's sickly, and you're over here essentially working and everything, and you're not attending to your freaking wife. Like, shouldn't you attend to your wife and everything? And it pisses Kudo off. And honestly, you know, realistically, Arata does have a point. Now I personally don't like the fact like he went all personal on Kudo, talking about like his wife and like, oh yeah, I dropped by your house and everything, you know, your wife don't look too good, and I'm questioning if you're actually a good caretaker for her. But you know, Arata is, he's not wrong, because we've seen the, like, in these 2 episodes, you know, Kudo was very focused on his work and everything, and obviously that's very important because they got to take care of the demons, or you know, I forgot what the things were called, but the demons are the enemies that they got to take care of, you know, so people don't end up dying. But at the same time, I understand his work is very much serious, but at the same time, like, if you're hearing from your sister and you're hearing from this dude, heck, even like, you could say, now they don't show it, but you know, even with the maid, you would think like, hey, you know, your wife's not doing too good. Like, I think you need to like maybe take off of work and like attend to her because she's not doing well. Like, I think he would have commanders that can hold the fort down, and unless barring like it's an urgent thing, he can be called in, because clearly, you know, Mio's going through all this stuff and everything, and she's fearful because her powers are awakening and she's getting these nightmares. And then also another point in in these 2 episodes go from the mention the fact like, you know, because of her trauma from her past and then these nightmares, you know, Kudo can easily tell like she's not telling me something, because there's many times throughout the 2 episodes like he's like, hey, you know, are you all right? You know, I just want to make sure you're okay. And obviously Mio's lying when she should be saying like, no, she isn't okay. She probably wants him by his side. She just is like, no, I'm fine. You know, go and intend to work and do what you need to do. And she's trying to push through this like trauma and this whole thing that's obviously giving her PTSD and a bunch of nightmares and everything. And Kudo knows like she's not telling me anything like legitimately. And you know, it then comes to a blow later in the episode where, you know, he comes home after the Arata conversation, after he kind of berated him, he's like, you're not taking care of your wife or whatever, right? And essentially you just have it to where he runs back home, it's nighttime, and he sees Mio in the kitchen. She's just standing there right next to the oven all open and everything, and you can kind of tell like she's out of it completely. And he's like, Mio, like, talk to me, like, why won't you tell me, like, you know, you're going through something, like, I'm here and everything. And she's kind of playing it, she's like, I just didn't want to disappoint you and everything, I'm so sorry. And then he does end up saying something that he kind of regrets saying, which upsets Mio a bit to the point she starts crying and then she runs off. So that whole thing has to be resolved in the next episode, in the 10th episode, which I'll do a video eventually at some point, or I'll record it. Maybe I'll just watch the episode and then go record it now, right? But you see that obviously like Mio struggling, she still has this issue of like not fully like expressing her feelings because she's still is out of her comfort shell, and she still has these PTSD moments of like, hey, does Kudo really truly do love me, or does love me? Like, is he actually there for me, or is he gonna treat me like my family used to, or they just don't give a crap about me, even though we clearly know like Kudo does deeply care, but this is her own trauma, her own PTSD. And then with the fact that he's also out, it's like she feels like she has to take this burden on by herself. And again, it's kind of more to Kudo's detriment. It's like, well, I understand you got work to do, but it's like, bruh, your wife is going through something. You can clearly tell she's sickly and she's pale and everything. Like, tell your people, like, hey, I got to take off work because I got to take care of my wife. She's not doing too well, and I got to be there to protect her, right? So, anyways, what then happens is that happens, and that's where the episode ends off being left off on a cliffhanger right there. But some cool moments that we do get is we do get a little bit of a nice one between Mio and Kudo where she does open up a bit to him. And this is where he's like, listen, if there's anything you need to tell me, just let me know. I'll always be there for you, and I'll be there to comfort you and everything. That was a nice scene because he holds her hand because he's like, come on, sit closer to me and everything. Because it was the whole thing of like, he ended up getting her to tell her like, no, I am lonely, because he's like, look, I know, I'm lonely when I'm not around you. Please tell me you're lonely. At first she denies like she's lonely, but then eventually, he's like, come on, I know you're lonely. And she just breaks down, and she says, yes, I am lonely, which obviously that's clearly a factor, the fact of like, look, dude, if you hear that she's lonely, maybe you probably should stay at home and be like, hey, I gotta stay here for my wife. She's not doing too well. I want to make sure she's in the best health possible, right? So that's the thing. And then another interesting thing that we got here with Kazuki is just the bond that her and Mio's growing. I like the fact how she kind of told Mio like, hey, you don't have to give me honorifics. Like, you don't have to call me Miss anymore. Like, just call me by my name, right? We're gonna be family, and so it's like you don't need to be showed. You don't need to call me all like obviously these honorifics, right? So she's like, just call me sister, right? And it looks like she's about to do it, but then she remembers again. She's having PTSD from the past with her bad relationship with Kaya. So because of it, she doesn't have enough courage to be able to say like, call her sister, right? So she's like, hey, is it okay if I just call you Kazuki? And Kazuki's like, okay, sure, yeah. I do like Kazuki. Whole thing. And then I did find it interesting now. Kazuki was also telling Mio like, hey, I just want to make sure that you're okay, that you have no regrets, because honestly, if you have any regrets about what you're doing, I don't want you to make a decision and then you have a regret. Because we actually get some backstory. We find out that Kazuki actually was once at some point married, but she's now divorced. She's a divorced member. And even if you watch the OVA episode, you see her husband, and then you see that she has actually a kid too, a boy, a child, right? But I'll talk about that in that episode, right? But you get the backstory about how she ended up getting married and then her regrets about it. And she actually goes on to say like, no, I actually have regrets of how I handled our divorce and handled our marriage. So essentially she married this guy, her husband, at a very young age, of the age of 17, because she fell in love with him and everything. But her family, obviously the Kudo family, was very obviously they gave her approval and everything. They were cool. But when it came to her husband's family, they didn't really approve of her because she couldn't do like the typical at that, in this time period, like womanly, duties. Because in this time period, it's like the women would be the housewives. They'd be able to cook for their husbands, make make the plates, make the table and everything, because that was the whole thing about the discussion, the fact like they tried Mio's food, and she's like, man, and Kazuki's like, man, my brother's so lucky that he has a good woman like you to cook for him, because she's like, because man, I can't cook for shit, right? And even like the maid's like, oh yes, Miss Kazuki was always struggling with stuff like that, right? And that in, her husband's parents really didn't like her because she didn't have those traits of being a good housewife, essentially. Now, I don't approve of now personally, if I was the husband, if I was the husband, I would tell my parents, be like, look, I love her. I don't really care what you think. Just because she may not be as special as you think she should be, that doesn't change the fact that I love her, right? And Kazuki goes on to say, like, there's many times like her husband talked to her about that and says, like, look, I don't really care about that. I love you for who you are. But at some point they got in a very heated argument, and because of that heated argument, it led her to getting a divorce, and she basically left. And she said she actually had her regrets of how she handled it, because she ended up having a talk with her mother. Um, and her mother's like, hey, I don't know, I think you're just overreacting. I think, it's understandable why you're upset, but I think you're just overreacting about this. Like, I don't think you really want to do this. Look, it's okay, and everything. And her mother reassured her, but by then, to her, she felt like it was too little too late. And plus, she already had left her husband's household. So it's like, she felt like, well, there was no need to, there was no need to return and everything, right? So realistically, it's like, it seems like she still loves her husband from a romantic level. Like, we even see the husband, in the OVA episode. So, maybe at some, excuse me, like, maybe at some point she does end up, after some time passes, gets back. But it seems like she's okay with her lifestyle now and everything. And, she's willing to accept it, and she understands, like, yeah, I made a mistake there. And yeah, I do regret it. Does that change the fact that I made that decision? No. But, you know, um, that's basically it, so that was a cool, nice little message that she gave to me about, like, not having regrets of what you're doing and everything, or understanding, like, sometimes, or actually, it's actually not having regrets. It's the whole thing of, like, making sure you know what decision you're gonna make, so you don't end up, having regrets after you committed it, right? So that was actually pretty deep, like, whole thing. I completely forgot about that whole story point. I even forgot, like, she actually told Mia, like, she got divorced and everything. But it's even crazy. But again, I'll talk about, like, the fact, like, especially when you add in the fact, like, she has a kid and everything. So that's the thing right then and there. But anyways, a solid episode of My Happy Marriage. Again, I'm happy to be talking about My Happy Marriage, especially with the fact that season 2 is coming up real fast. So yeah, but anyways, if you guys like the video, leave a like, put in the comment section your thoughts for these 2 episodes of My Happy Marriage, and then your hype levels for season 2 of My Happy Marriage. It's one of the best romance shows I've watched, straight up. So there's that. But anyways, I'm gonna get out of here, guys. Catch you guys in the next video. Hit the subscribe button if you want to get more anime content uploaded to the channel and things like that. But till then, guys, stay safe out there. Have a good Christmas, and stay safe. Till then, guys, peace.